Okay, so can you see this? You see the circle?
Yes.
So this symbol, the circle, to me symbolizes what I would term as the new leadership. I would also call it collective leadership. I would call it facilitative leadership. I think it goes by a lot of names, but basically what it is, it is not the lonely leader. It is a group of all leaders, and it's collaborative. It's often in a circle. It includes all voices. So it really challenges the stereotype of the authoritative lone leader who's, takes unilateral decisions, etc. uh, it's it's less about having all the right answers, and it's more about having everyone in the room, having everyone at the table, having everyone at the circle, and asking the right questions. So that is my understanding of the new leadership. I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story and then some content with you. And then I hope we go into dialogue. And then I'll share some resources, some of the things I use in my work. Um, are you still with me? It says my internet is unstable.
Still with you.
Good. Please, I don't know, like jump up and down or something if like suddenly you're not hearing me. Um, I was asked to imagine what the world will be like when today's 15-year-olds are 35. And I thought about that. I was like, well, that's in 20 years. And a lot of things are supposed to happen in 20 years. Um, and I don't at all mean to be a doom and gloom prophet, because that's not who I am. But one of the key things, of course, is climate change. Um, I looked at the 7.8 billion people in the world today, and when you look at the stats, um, there are so many below 15. And I did the math, and calculating the math, doing the math, it looks like there'll be something like 130 million 15-year-olds in the world today. Uh, so that's a lot. That's a massive army of 15-year-olds. Uh, and I hope, well, maybe if, one of you or a few of you are impacted by today's session and aspire to be a new leader, that would be great. And maybe we may have a different kind of leadership. um, just to show you this, I know it looks probably a little weird, but let's zoom in a little bit. What is this? It's talking about where we'll be in 20 years. In 20 years, if we continue on our current climate trajectory, again, I don't want to be all doom and gloom here, but this is climate figures from 1880s all the way. And if you look at the variant from average temperature, it used to be colder, a little bit less colder, and then it was started to shift a little bit. You see here in the mid 1940s, 1950s, and then it warmed up a little bit, cooled a little bit, warmed a little bit, cooled and warmed. And then as you move towards the 1980s, the variant from the average became higher and higher and higher and higher. And then, as we move into the 2000s, we're of course, as you know already, the highest temperatures ever. If you look at 2020, we're one point something above the average temperature. So going back to the where we'll be in 20 years, Um, if we have a they estimate a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. If we stop emitting carbon in the next, couple of decades, emitting at the levels that we're emitting, and then this is what it looks like if it's a 2-degree increase. The impact on species, the impact on insects who are pollinators, therefore the impact on food and fruit, and you look at decline in coral reefs, and you look at heat, and then ice-free summers in the Arctic. So this is pretty grim if you're talking about 20 years, meaning the 15-year-olds today will be 35. And I mean, climate is one of those issues that really doesn't know boundaries. There are no boundaries for climate. Everyone, we're all going to experience it. Um, okay, so I'm going to shift from there. I'm going to talk about the new leadership and why do we need the new leadership? If you look at just one core issue of climate, uh, you know, we are going to need everyone. We're going to need all of you, all the young people, all the grandmas, and I'll hopefully be a grandma at that time. And the more we can sit in circles and co-create solutions, I think the better off we'll be. So I started my first business at the age of 23, and I did it in the usual way, the top down, authoritative. I was the leader. I had staff. I told them what to do. And I did that for a good part of 10 years. And I had an experience in 1997, I believe, in Taipei, where I experienced leadership in a circle. And it was my first encounter with a circle. There were two facilitators, there was 34 people, and I couldn't understand why they were not giving us very clear directives about what to do. They allowed us to muddle through issues and problems and conflicts. But after 3 days of sitting together in a circle, there was this mind-blowing spirit. And I called it the collective genius. There was just something unique and highly intelligent and highly capable about this group of people. And I was blown away that there weren't any strong, charismatic leaders. There were two very quiet, very skilled facilitators. And that's when I became very compelled by facilitation. And I started to do various training courses, and then I began to apply it in my own organizations. Uh, in 2020, 2001, 2002, 3, I began to shift towards the nonprofit world and began more and more to apply this kind of leadership in my work. And then in 2011, I built this organization, which I'll talk a little bit about later, called Forever Sabah, really deploying what I would call the new leadership or collective leadership. Uh, and so let's look at the principles. I believe collective leadership or the new leadership uh, is based on believing in diversity, equity, inclusivity. That means all of you, anybody who looks like you and others, have diverse backgrounds, speak different languages, are shy, are introverted, are loud, are extroverted, gender, bending, all of the above. And I think what happens when we are in a space where voices are heard is we create something above and beyond the sum of its parts. So 10 people will not create a group of 10 people. It creates another level of magic that when 10 people come together with a common vision happens. And also I would, call this the collective genius. You problem solve in a different way from, for example, if it was Cynthia on her own in a room trying to problem solve and giving orders about how it should be solved. I think it is more effective and more resilient than any kind of leadership when you have the 10 people or the 20 and everyone comes to it like, the Avengers. Everyone has different strengths. Everyone has different superpowers. So what is the purpose? Why would we use collective leadership? It convenes, so you convene everyone that needs to be at the table. So if a problem is about water, a problem is about pollution, everyone at every every part of the problem needs to be at the table. The polluter, the polluted, the on all ends of the issue should be at the table. um, and then we build relationships, we build partnerships, we tend to the process of communicating, the process of discussion, of conversation about the issues and then about the solutions. And then we synthesize. Synthesize together, well, what could a solution look like? What could a partnership between us look like? What would success look like? And then leading into the practice. So the practice of collective leadership is, to me, fundamentally different from the old style of leadership, which is more top down. We have tools, we have methodologies to draw from. You can train in these. They're not that difficult. It's not magical. Everyone can learn how to do it, and everyone will do it uniquely. And I also think what collective leadership does is it confronts the discrimination of the stereotypical leader. Like the leader has to look like me, or has to look like, think of somebody powerful and charismatic. That person, that's the stereotypical leader. I think collective leadership confronts that belief that leadership needs to look a certain way. Um, all right, so I talked a little bit about the top down. So if you look at this is common it's in corporations, it's in governments, it's in schools. It's basically, this to me is the standard model of leadership. You have someone who calls the shots, and then you have upper level management and then mid level, etc. Usually it works in this kind of way where you see their macro design. That is your laws, that is your policies, that is your master plans, the way you're going to develop as a country, the way your city will develop, etc. And then this vertical line is knowledge, and it's more about the formal knowledge. You learn about your PhD course or your master's in law, etc. Um, and the best, to me, that this kind of model can deliver is you can't even go down to the ground, because you're always gonna struggle against the currents of just culture and society, and you will do this sideways thing, and you will have some kind of manifestation in a local scenario. But it isn't, your plan is never going to be perfect. You're never going to achieve that plan. So then going down a little bit, this to me, this bunch of circles and lines is a sort of, to me, is one way of symbolizing collective leadership, where it's networked, it's connected. Uh, this on the ground, the lower horizontal line is, let's say, your kampongs, your towns, your communities, where knowledge is more experiential. Think about little projects that you're trying to do. You will achieve something, you can achieve some scale, And you can get to this sort of level of better practices or even recognizing patterns of behavior. But how would you navigate and traverse this whole area of complexity in the middle? I call this like the sea of complexity or the gap of complexity. And to me, my experience so far has been that you need oops sorry you need collective leadership, in partnership with, connecting to these guys, the policymakers, the government, whoever are the powers that be. You can begin to build the knowledge in this gap between the experiential and the formal, and then you begin to navigate the complexity, and connect the dots and connect the top and the bottom. That's my experience of how this works. So, to give you an example, this is the work that I do, as well as Noel, my colleague who's on the call. This is what we call the Forever Sabah ecology. Let me zoom in. It's like everything is here. So we work s- um, on food, agriculture, fisheries, energy, infrastructure, waste, forest, water, soil, livelihoods, tourism, enterprise. In the middle, we have what we call the living landscapes and living seascapes. And then nature gives way to culture, gives way to the economy. We have program areas. Sabah is a large producer of palm oil. We produce 10% of global supply, which is huge for a small state. So it's very important for us to do it right, to do it with the best practices. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to shift our practices to the best global standards, where there's no deforestation, etc. Watersheds, farming, forests, wetlands. We work on highways, habitats, balancing development and infrastructure, fresh water, um, and then all this around here are a suite of projects. We work with elephants, revitalizing paddy growing, renewable energy, great apes and livelihoods, alternative livelihoods, fisheries. Then we have three pillars: governance, so the board of the organization, which is, again, all stakeholders are present, from government to community to science to civil society. Finance is how all of this is funded. And then coordination is how we juggle all of these things. So we don't manage it, we don't command and control it, we coordinate it because it's a lot of balls in the air. Um, there's cross-cutting themes here, of engaging the communities wherever we work, doing citizen science. Citizen science just means what are the questions the community cares about, like how much yield is this kind of paddy producing, how much water do they need to put in to the fields. So it's answering the kind of questions that they care about. Spatial science is big data. It's mapping at a high level of forests, of carbon and such. Legal innovation is usually about policy or law or legal change and transformation. Everything we do is about partnerships and collaborations. Facilitation and design is the way we do everything that you've seen here. And communications is how we tell the story, to who we tell the story. Forever Sabah Institute is the learning component of all that we do. So turning all these practical projects and solutions into learning opportunities for Sabahans, for young people like yourselves. And all of this is this what we call intersector collaboration towards shifting our economy from the linear extractive, to a diversified, equitable, and circular economy. So it's, as you can see, it's a big systems change approach, And you can only achieve this through the new leadership, through collective leadership. This cannot happen if I was sitting at the top of a pyramid and giving directions and orders to everyone and telling them exactly what to do. This requires a group of all leaders, requires people to take responsibility at different levels, requires creativity, um, all the things to me that, you know, are characteristics of collective leadership. Okay, so final parting words. Not that I'm going anywhere yet, but a mentor once said to me, anyone, anywhere, at any moment in time can be the epicenter for change. And we are the ones we have been waiting for. This link over here takes us to, I believe, a bunch of resources that Ashoka has uploaded, and it'll be, you know, various ways of facilitation that I have practiced and I have also shared with a lot of my colleagues. And finally, I'm going to share a video with you. I'm going to ask, see if you can tell me what it is. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, anyone, any guesses? What is this?
Fresh water
I'll give you
current.
a prize. So look at where it is. So it's emanating from the equatorial region, right there in the middle. And it's precipitation. It's water in the atmosphere that emanates from the equatorial rainforest regions of the world. So you've got, of course, the Amazon area in South America. You've got the whole Congo Basin area in Africa, and then you've got in Southeast Asia, all our, you know, rainforests in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, etc. So this is, whenever anyone asks you why rainforests are important and vital for the planet, this is why. Because you look at where the water in the air goes, it literally goes all over the planet with the winds and etc. And this keeps things cool. And this is the function that will be fundamentally impacted, you know, when we change our landscapes. I think I've said enough, and I would love to hear.
Hello and welcome to the Year of Weather for 2018. My name is Mark Higgins from UMETSAT, and I'm going to talk you through the satellite animation.
Oh, whoa! Sorry.
So as we start to look at
sorry,
the video,
sorry.
straight away at the beginning of the year,
You're not supposed to hear that. I thought that was somebody presenting over there, an audience member. I'd love to hear from you, your questions in the chat. I believe there's a session later for personal stories, and someone called Martin Tan will be moderating. I think he's probably here. And yeah, over to whoever is. Let's look at questions. How much time do we have, Deanne?
You have, why I'm putting myself on mute. Sorry, you have another 15 minutes or so, Cynthia.
Okay, 15 minutes.
Please do turn on your cameras, you guys.
Okay. Maybe someone can give me a hand. I'm looking at questions and comments. Yes, absolutely. You can get the presentation. I'm happy to share that. Someone said Nilama says, really appreciate seeing this ecology diagram, just thinking in these types of connected circles. Yes, absolutely. You all seem to like the diagram. Good. Uh, it mimics nature actually. Instead of putting everything, all the organization and its work in boxes, it is, you know, this sort of unfolding circles, you know, I really mimicking nature. So here are the resources that are on that link. These are various kinds of methodologies for facilitation. If you're interested, there's open space technology, which believes in passion and responsibility and igniting that and having people step up as leaders. There's something called appreciative inquiry. There's something called World Cafe. There's something called Theory U, which is a little more complex, but also very powerful. There's community building, which is a specific technology for group work. See a lot of other links here, loads of resources, more links. Yep. Global warming, climate change, you are right. Is there anything we can learn from old leadership? Very interesting question. Are there benefits in old leadership or a possibility that old and new leadership can coexist and prosper together? I really believe, I think that's a great question. I believe you're always going to have the powers at the top. You're always going to have top down. I don't think it is even wise not to have it. We have to have policies. We have to have master plans, guidelines, protocols, you know, all these things to guide us. They will always be there, but how do we create them is another story. Like, do we create laws and bottom up processes? You know, do we have consultations with the public? You know, these kinds of things. And I think if you recall, let me go back to the image where I had the two diagrams. You know, this whole thing about complexity. The world is not going to become simpler. I believe with climate change, it's going to become increasingly complex. And so my attitude is embrace complexity, and work with it and try to understand it. And I think we need both these kinds of structures. So let's call it like the old leadership, right? And then the more newer, you know, flatter, more collaborative, collective leadership. I think the two would be powerful together, but they have to recognize each other and the strengths that one and the other has. And in fact, a group can operate both ways. You can have the conversation. Okay, and right now we're going to do this, and right now we're going to do that. You know, you can even have a discussion about which moments, which decisions require different models. We are the ones who have been waiting for, yes. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about where it originated, but I think it originated in a poem by a woman, and then it's been used by many people. So in a simple sense, is everyone a leader? I believe so. I believe that every single human being has leadership qualities, and it will look different for everyone. And again, if you think about climate, would you want to do your thing? Would you want to have your say? Would you want to have your voice in that conversation? Would you want to mobilize? I mean, you know, you can see a lot of young Westerners like Greta Thunberg, Bella Lack, all these young people. they, just spoke up, and then of course they become icons. But um, I shy away from making people iconic, because I think that's antithetical to collective leadership. It's like we all have to be heroes in our own on our own journeys, and making someone else the hero is in a way like not taking my responsibility to be the hero that I am or can be. What are the limitations of new leadership? Good question. I think sometimes it's easy to hide behind all these kind of fuzzy boundaries, or lack of. You can say, well, there are 10 of us here. I thought the other 9 people were going to do it. um it's easy to be lost in process and not make really important decisions that you have to make. So I think it can also be a place to hide. It can also be slower. I think it is definitely slower, because you have to have the conversations, you have to have the difficult conversations. All voices have to be heard. So I think it does have a slowing down factor, but then it may also be more robust in addressing a problem. How can we change our attitudes when education systems may not support new leadership ideas? Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is a big question. I don't know, what do you guys think? How do you think how do you think we can change our attitudes if your schools, your institutions of higher learning, etc., still believe in a certain kind of leadership? Anyone want to try out an answer?
I think Shreya just wrote individual initiatives. Maybe Shreya, if you want to share a little bit more here.
Initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, what I kind of meant was that it kind of when the schools may not support this kind of idea of moving forward and being progressive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the teacher as the expert and the student as the learner, non-expert, is in itself, that is the basis really of that kind of leadership, because you don't see it as a co-learning experience. I think, for example, with Forever Sabah Institute, we see it as everyone is learning. We don't call people experts, really. They're resource people. They are sharing from their experience, and they are also learning in the experience of sharing. And there's always a lot of discussion, and we learn together in discussion and conversation. Yeah, so I mean, when I think about my own education here in Sabah, I just remember being told, read this, underline this is going to be a question in the exam. And there was just, never any dialogue, or even, asking questions, and sort of unpacking something together. I don't know. I mean, I would say, I think if I was 15 again and I was in school and I have this thinking that I have today, I would challenge my teachers. And I think perhaps it's teaching staff and faculty, principals, etc., maybe need to be exposed to this kind of thinking around leadership, and have classes that are more participatory, more collaborative even, and learn together. Does that make sense? Okay, someone says, personally, I'm not a fan of the idea of leadership to begin with. The idea that everyone can be a leader is strange as well. Surely some people will need to follow the leader and get things done. I am interested in how collective leadership or participatory, more democratic ways of doing can be uncomfortable for all of us. I think it takes learning, but also for the unlearning, very important point, whether it is for the old, new leaders or people who are stepping up. How do you navigate that? E.g., are there cases in which when you create spaces for people to step up and they don't because they are so used to old leadership? Yes, very spot on. Everyone will respond to it in different ways. Some people will resist it for as long as they can, because the thought of speaking up in a culture where we're not taught to speak up, we're not encouraged to speak up, is scary. So they will try to hide behind, I don't understand this. This is, this doesn't make sense to me. Um, and I think it is uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable in certain cases. And so my experience has been, and Noel, my colleague here, may be able to speak to it. Feel free to share, Noel. I think some people thrive in it, love it. And then some people are scared as hell. Some people just say, I wish you would just tell me what to do when I come to work every day. I think there's every kind of response in this, along the spectrum. It and then again, it doesn't mean that everyone being a leader means that we're all going to be leading the charge and no one's going to be following. It just means that in a circle of, let's say, 10, someone says, I have a great idea for how we're going to fund this, because that person is fascinated about the funding world, is creative, is extroverted, loves to talk to, funders, etc. Someone may say they want to do the design part of things. Someone may say they want to do the comms, the website, so everyone will have a skill or a passion or an interest to bring to the table. And in that case, let's say someone who's really good at design or communications, I will be following that person, even though I'm quote unquote the boss in that situation. You see what I mean? So you follow the person most passionate, most able. Usually they will be more able than others because that's their area of interest. This is something that open space technology really believes in. Someone says June Jordan is the poet. Yes, you are right. 3 minutes, wrap up in 3 minutes. Well, what is my wrap up? I loved your questions. I think they are very on the spot. You're questioning, you are not just taking it like, oh, this just sounds wonderful and it sounds perfect and this is the answer for everything. You're questioning it in a real way. um and that's very wise. I love that you're also asking how can the new and the old work together. I think that there isn't one size fits all. We need to learn from all these various methodologies. With my team, I call it vertical literacy. So You know how to do the top down, you know how to do the bottom up, you know how to do in the middle. You go from wherever you need to go on that spectrum, depending on the thing you're talking about, the solution, the decision you need to make. So yes, vertical literacy. I also love that concept. I'm looking at my notes to see if there was anything that I forgot. No, I think I covered everything. Sorry, I don't have like a pithy conclusion, but I love this conversation. And do look at the resources that I shared. I'll share my presentation. I don't know how we would get it to you, but Dion, you probably know how to get it to everyone. Thank you so much for listening.